You're exhausted, not the kind of exhausted that sleep fixes. The other kind. The kind that lives in your bones. The kind where you wake up in the morning and the first thing you feel isn't rested. It's weight. Like someone piled stones on your chest while you were sleeping, and you have to spend the next 16 hours carrying them before you're allowed to lie down again. You've been fighting. For how long now? Months. Maybe years. Fighting to get through the day. Fighting to hold it together at work. Fighting to show up for people who need you when you can barely show up for yourself. Fighting to feel something other than this flat, heavy, colorless version of being alive. Fighting to want things again. Fighting to care. Fighting just to get out of bed some mornings, and nobody around you has any idea how much energy that single act requires. And you're tired of it. You're tired of fighting. You're tired of people telling you to fight harder, to be strong, to push through, to look on the bright side, to count your blessings, to try yoga, to drink more water, to think positive, as if the darkness you're sitting in is a problem you haven't tried hard enough to solve, as if you're choosing this, as if wanting to feel better and actually feeling better are the same thing. They're not. And you know that. You know it in the deepest, most exhausted part of yourself. This audiobook is not going to tell you to fight. It's not going to give you a pep talk. It's not going to hand you 5 steps to happiness or a morning routine that cures depression or a mindset hack that makes the darkness disappear. If those things worked, you wouldn't be here. You've tried them. You've tried all of them, and you're still sitting in the dark. So instead of trying to drag you into the light, this book is going to sit with you, right here, in the dark, where you actually are, not where people want you to be, not where the self-help industry pretends you should be by now, where you are. And from here, from this honest place, we're going to look at what's actually happening inside you, why you're so tired, what the darkness actually is, what it's trying to tell you, what happens when you stop fighting it and start listening to it, and what the path forward looks like when it's built on truth instead of forced positivity. Let's talk about the reality. Depression affects over 280 million people worldwide. Anxiety disorders affect nearly 300 million. But the numbers don't capture the exhaustion. They don't capture the daily performance of being okay when you're not. They don't measure the energy it takes to smile at the grocery store when your chest feels hollow. They don't quantify the weight of pretending. Studies from the World Health Organization consistently show that depression is the leading cause of disability globally. Not cancer, not heart disease, depression. The thing people still tell you to snap out of. The thing that's costing you everything and that nobody around you fully understands. You've been carrying this for longer than you probably admit. Think about when it started, not the day you first named it. The day you first felt it, that might be years ago. And since that day, you've been performing normalcy, performing strength, performing I'm fine. And every performance costs energy you don't have. Energy that should be going toward healing. Instead, it goes toward hiding. And the hiding makes everything worse because it isolates you inside your own experience. And isolation is where darkness grows thickest. Here's what this audiobook will do. Chapter 1 looks at what the darkness actually is, not the simplified version, the real neuroscience and psychology of what's happening when everything feels heavy and flat. Chapter 2 addresses the exhaustion specifically, why you're so tired and why rest doesn't fix it. Chapter 3 is about what the darkness is trying to tell you, the messages inside the pain that you've been too busy fighting to hear. Chapter 4 is the shift, not from dark to light, from fighting to understanding, from resistance to presence. Chapter 5 is about moving forward without pretending the darkness never happened. By the end of this hour, the darkness won't be gone. I'm not going to promise that, but you'll understand it differently. You'll have stopped fighting something you were never meant to fight, and you'll have found something that no amount of forced positivity could ever give you. Permission. Permission to be exactly where you are, and a quiet, honest path forward from there. I need one thing from you. Stop performing right now. For the next hour, you don't have to be okay. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be getting better. You just have to be honest about where you are. That's all. Can you do that? Can you stop pretending for 60 minutes? Good, let's sit here together. Let's start. Chapter 1: What the darkness actually is. Everyone has an opinion about what you're going through. Your family thinks you're sad. Your friends think you need to get out more. Social media thinks you need gratitude journaling and cold showers. The wellness industry thinks you need a supplement. Everyone has a theory. Almost none of them are right, because what you're experiencing isn't what most people think it is, and understanding what it actually is. That's the first step towards something that actually helps. Let's start with what the darkness is not. It's not sadness. Sadness has a shape. It comes, it peaks, it passes. You cry, and afterward you feel a little lighter. The darkness doesn't work like that. The darkness isn't a wave, it's a weather system. It moves in and stays. It doesn't peak and release. It sits, flat, heavy, gray. You can't cry it out because it's not that kind of pain. It's more like numbness with weight, like feeling nothing and everything at the same time. And the absence of a clear emotion to process makes it harder, not easier. Because at least sadness gives you something to hold. The darkness gives you nothing to hold and everything to carry. This is crucial. What most people experience as depression or burnout or emotional exhaustion isn't a single thing. It's a system collapse, multiple systems inside you, neurological, psychological, emotional, physical, all of them overloaded, depleted, or dysregulated at the same time. Your brain, your nervous system, your emotional processing capacity, your body, they're all involved. And they're all struggling. Treating it as a single problem with a single solution is why nothing has worked so far. Let's look at what's happening neurologically. Your brain runs on neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that regulate mood, motivation, energy, sleep, appetite, pleasure, and your ability to care about anything at all. 3 of them are critically important here. Serotonin, which regulates mood stability and your baseline sense of being okay in the world. When serotonin is functioning well, you don't feel euphoric. You just feel stable. You feel like yourself. When it's depleted, the floor drops out. Everything feels precarious, uncertain, wrong. Dopamine, which drives motivation, reward, and your ability to want things. Not just big things, small things, the desire to cook a meal, the interest in a conversation, the motivation to get dressed. When dopamine is disrupted, wanting itself disappears. You look at things that used to excite you and feel nothing. And norepinephrine, which controls energy, alertness, and your capacity to engage with the world around you. When norepinephrine drops, You get the brain fog, the inability to concentrate, the feeling of trying to think through wet cement. When these systems are functioning well, you feel like yourself. You have energy, you have motivation, you have the ability to enjoy things and plan for things and look forward to things. When they're depleted or dysregulated, everything changes, not metaphorically, chemically, literally. The flatness you feel isn't a choice you're making. It's a chemical state your brain is in. The inability to enjoy things that used to make you happy has a clinical name: anhedonia. And it's one of the hallmark features of depressive states. It's not that you don't want to enjoy things. You do. You desperately want to. Your brain has literally lost the chemical capacity to register pleasure the way it used to. The receptor sites are underperforming. The pathways are disrupted. The signals aren't getting through. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not choosing misery. Your neurochemistry is disrupted, and that disruption is as real as a broken bone. The only difference is that nobody can see it on an X-ray. Most people miss this about what's happening in your body alongside the brain changes. When your nervous system is chronically stressed or overwhelmed, it shifts into a state called dorsal vagal shutdown. This is the freeze response. Your autonomic nervous system has 3 modes: sympathetic, which is fight or flight; active, energized, anxious; ventral vagal, which is safety and connection; calm, engaged, social; and dorsal vagal, which is collapse, shut down, withdrawn, numb. When you've been in fight or flight for too long, when the stress has been too much for too long, your nervous system doesn't just keep fighting, it gives up. It drops into dorsal vagal, and dorsal vagal feels exactly like what you've been describing: heavy, flat, disconnected, unable to engage, unable to feel, like you're watching your life through thick glass. This isn't laziness. This isn't weakness. This is your nervous system, protecting you the only way it knows how when it's been overwhelmed beyond its capacity to cope. Here's what actually happens when these systems collide. Your neurotransmitters are depleted, so your brain can't generate normal motivation or pleasure. Your nerve O's system is in shutdown, so your body feels heavy and disconnected. Your emotional processing is backed up, so feelings that should flow through you get stuck instead. And your cognitive function is impaired. Concentration drops, memory gets foggy, decision-making becomes exhausting, everything requires more effort. Getting dressed requires effort. Making a meal requires effort. Having a conversation requires effort, not because the tasks are hard, because your entire system is running on emergency power. You're operating at maybe 30% capacity and trying to live 100% life. That gap is the exhaustion. That gap is why you're so tired. Not because you're doing too much, because everything costs more when your systems are depleted. Let's talk about something nobody says out loud. The darkness changes time. When you're in it, time moves differently than it does for everyone else. Days feel endless and also somehow empty. You get to the end of the day and you can't account for where the hours went. You didn't accomplish anything visible, but you're more tired than if you had run a marathon. People around you see the lack of output and assume you did nothing. They don't see what actually happened. They don't see the invisible war. This is because your brain is using enormous amounts of energy just to maintain basic function. It's running background processes constantly. Rumination. The same thoughts cycling through your mind on a loop. hypervigilance, scanning for threats, for judgment, for signs that the mask is slipping, emotional suppression, actively holding down feelings that want to surface at inconvenient moments, self-monitoring, constantly checking yourself to make sure you're appearing normal. These invisible processes consume massive cognitive resources, more than most people's entire productive workday. You're not doing nothing. You're doing an enormous amount of invisible work just to get through each hour without falling apart. And nobody sees it, and nobody credits you for it, and nobody understands why you're so tired at the end of a day where you didn't do anything. But it's real. It's the hardest work you've ever done. And it's exhausting beyond what any external observer could guess. The real reason the darkness feels so total, so all-encompassing, is that it's not one thing. It's a system-wide event. Brain, body, nervous system, emotions, cognition, all of it, affected simultaneously, interacting with each other, making each other worse. This is why a single intervention never works. You can't yoga your way out of neurotransmitter depletion. You can't gratitude journal your way out of nervous system shutdown. You can't positive think your way past a brain that has chemically lost its ability to feel pleasure. These interventions aren't useless, but they're trying to fix one piece of a system-wide collapse, and you need to understand the whole system before any single piece can be effectively addressed. You now know what you're actually dealing with, not a bad attitude, not a lack of effort, a multi-system event that is depleting you on every level simultaneously. But knowing what the darkness is raises the next question. Why are you so impossibly bone-deep tired? And why doesn't rest fix it? That's what matters now. Chapter 2. The Exhaustion Beneath the Exhaustion. You've tried resting. You've slept 12 hours and woken up tired. You've taken weekends off and felt worse by Sunday night. You've done the bath, the tea, the early bedtime, the screen-free evening, and none of it recharged you. Because the exhaustion you're carrying isn't physical. It's not a sleep debt. It's something deeper, something that no amount of lying down can reach. There are layers to exhaustion that most people never learn to distinguish. And when you're in the darkness, all the layers collapse into one heavy, undifferentiated feeling of I can't. But they're different, and they need different things. Understanding the layers is the difference between rest that heals and rest that frustrates. The first layer is physical exhaustion. This is real and it matters. Chronic stress and depression physically change your body. Cortisol, your stress hormone, stays elevated for extended periods. This disrupts sleep architecture. You might be sleeping 8 hours, but your brain isn't cycling through the restorative stages properly. You're getting quantity without quality. Your body is inflamed. Chronic stress triggers inflammatory responses that cause fatigue, body aches, brain fog, and immune suppression. You're not imagining that you get sick more often. You're not imagining the headaches or the heaviness in your limbs. Your body is physically bearing the weight of what your mind has been carrying. This layer responds to physical intervention. Better sleep hygiene, anti-inflammatory nutrition, gentle movement, medical support. It's the most concrete layer and it's important, but it's only the surface. This is crucial. The second layer is emotional exhaustion, and this is the one that rest can't touch. No amount of sleep reaches this layer. No vacation addresses it. No weekend off makes a dent. Emotional exhaustion comes from suppressing, performing, and carrying feelings that haven't been processed. Think about what you actually do every single day. You wake up feeling heavy. Before your feet hit the floor, there's already weight on your chest. You push through it. You get up. You go to work. You smile at the people who expect you to smile. You answer "I'm good" when someone asks how you are, and you say it so convincingly that they never ask a follow-up question. You hold yourself together in meetings, in conversations, in mundane interactions that require social energy you don't have. You laugh at jokes that don't land. You make small talk that costs you more than anyone realizes. You come home and collapse, but the collapse isn't rest, it's depletion. It's the aftermath of a performance that ran all day on an empty tank. Because all day long, you've been doing invisible emotional labor that nobody can see and nobody acknowledges. Managing the gap between how you feel and how you appear. Monitoring yourself for signs that the mask is slipping. Adjusting your expression, your tone, your energy to match what's expected of you. That management is exhausting. It is a second full-time job running simultaneously with your actual job. No one sees it. No one pays you for it. No one even knows it's happening. And it never gets a day off. Not weekends, not holidays, not vacations. Every moment you're around other humans, the performance runs. Emotional exhaustion also comes from unprocessed grief, anger, fear, and loss. Not just dramatic losses, the quiet ones, the loss of who you used to be, the loss of the energy you used to have, the loss of the future you imagined before the darkness moved in, the loss of feeling like yourself. These losses accumulate, and if they don't get processed, if they don't get acknowledged, felt, and moved through, they get stored in your body, in your nervous system, in the heavy feeling that sleep doesn't fix. You're not tired from doing too much. You're tired from carrying too much that hasn't been put down. Most people miss this about the third layer, existential exhaustion. This is the deepest and hardest to name. It's the tiredness that comes from questioning the point of everything. Why am I doing this? What's the purpose? Does any of this matter? These questions aren't philosophical exercises when you're in the darkness. They're lived experiences. They color everything. They make every task feel heavier because behind every task is the silent question of whether the task has any meaning. Getting up feels pointless. Going to work feels pointless. Even things that used to bring joy feel pointless. This isn't depression talking. Well, it partly is. But it's also a legitimate response to a system that's collapsed. When your brain can't generate pleasure and your nervous system is in shutdown and your emotional reserves are empty, meaning genuinely becomes harder to access. It's not that meaning doesn't exist. It's that your capacity to perceive it has been chemically impaired. You're not nihilistic. You're depleted. Here's what actually happens when all three layers of exhaustion overlap. You get what feels like an impossible weight, a tiredness so deep that the word tired doesn't cover it. People around you don't understand. They see you sleeping. They see you resting. They assume you should be better by now. You slept all weekend. Why are you still tired? Because sleep addresses layer 1. Nobody addressed layer 2 or 3. The emotional weight is still there. The existential questioning is still there. And those layers don't respond to sleep. They respond to processing, to acknowledgement, to finally being allowed to put down what you've been carrying without someone telling you to carry it differently. Let me be direct about something. The performance of being okay is the single biggest energy drain in your life right now. More than work, more than responsibilities, more than the darkness itself. The gap between how you feel and how you present is consuming a staggering amount of your limited resources. Every forced smile is a withdrawal from an account that's already overdrawn. Every "I'm fine" costs you energy you could have spent on actually healing. The performance isn't protecting you. It's draining you. And the cruel irony is that you perform because you think it protects the people around you. But it doesn't. It just means you suffer alone instead of suffering supported. The real reason you're so tired isn't because you're not resting enough. It's because you're carrying 3 kinds of exhaustion simultaneously while performing wellness for everyone around you. Physical depletion, emotional backlog, and existential weight. All at once, all unaddressed, all invisible to the people who keep telling you to try harder. You've been fighting the darkness, and that fighting is its own exhaustion. But what if the darkness isn't something to fight? What if it's something to listen to? That question changes everything. And it's next. Chapter 3. What the darkness is trying to tell you. This is the chapter that most self-help skips entirely, because most self-help treats the darkness as the enemy, something to defeat, something to overcome, something to push through, power past, rise above. And that framing feels right. Of course you want to defeat the thing that's making you miserable. Of course you want it gone. But what if the darkness isn't the enemy? What if it's the messenger? Let me explain what I mean. Your body has a pain system. When you touch a hot stove, you feel pain. The pain isn't the problem. The burning is the problem. The pain is the signal, the alarm that says something is wrong and needs attention. If you silence the pain without addressing the burn, you destroy your hand. The pain exists to protect you. It exists to redirect your attention toward the thing that needs healing. This is crucial. Emotional darkness works the same way. The heaviness, the numbness, the flatness, the exhaustion, these aren't malfunctions. They're signals. Your nervous system is saying something. Your emotional body is saying something. Your deepest self is saying something. And you've been so busy trying to silence the signal that you haven't listened to the message. So let's listen. Right now, what is the darkness actually saying? Message 1. You have been running on empty for too long. The darkness is your system's way of forcing a stop. You wouldn't stop voluntarily. You tried to push through. You tried to keep going. You tried to maintain the pace, the output, the performance. And when willpower ran out, your system pulled the emergency brake. The collapse, the heaviness, the inability to function at your previous level, that's not failure. That's a forced rest. Your body did what your mind refused to do. It stopped. Most people miss this about the shutdown. It's protective. It feels like destruction, but it's actually preservation. Your nervous system entered dorsal vagal collapse not to punish you, to save you. From the burnout that was coming. From the breakdown that was one more push through away. From the physical collapse that chronic stress was building toward. The darkness arrived because continuing at the pace you were going was more dangerous than stopping. Your system chose the lesser catastrophe. Message 2. There are feelings you haven't felt, grief you haven't grieved, anger you haven't expressed, fear you haven't faced, loss you haven't mourned. These emotions didn't disappear when you pushed them down. They didn't evaporate because you were too busy to deal with them. They went underground, into your body, into your nervous system, into the place where unfelt feelings become physical weight. And underground emotions don't stay quiet. They ferment. They pressurize. They become the heaviness you carry that has no name. They become the exhaustion that sleep can't fix. They become the tears that come at random moments for no apparent reason, except the reason isn't random at all. It's years of storage finally leaking through the cracks. Every feeling you suppress to keep going, to hold it together at work, to be strong for your kids, to not burden your partner, to meet the deadline, to survive the week. It's still in there, waiting, not patiently, urgently. The darkness is what happens when the waiting has gone on too long and the pressure has built too high and your system can no longer contain what you've been refusing to feel. Here's what actually happens when you start listening instead of fighting. The first thing you notice is that the darkness isn't empty. It's not a void. It's full of things you put there, full of grief for the person you were before this, full of anger at the expectations that depleted you, full of fear about whether you'll ever feel like yourself again, full of sadness for the life you imagined that this derailed. When you stop fighting and start listening, you begin to hear these things. And hearing them is the first step to moving them, not fixing them, not solving them, moving them through you the way emotions are designed to move. In, through, and out, not in, stuffed down and stored permanently. Message 3. The life you were living wasn't working. This is the hardest message to hear, because it implicates the choices you've made, not as blame, as honest assessment, the pace you kept, the needs you ignored because there wasn't time, the boundaries you didn't set because you were afraid of disappointing people, the help you didn't ask for because you thought you should be able to handle everything alone, the version of yourself you maintained at enormous cost because that's the version people needed, the schedule that left no room for rest, the standards you held yourself to that no human could sustain indefinitely. The darkness is partly here because the life you built around it was unsustainable. Not wrong, not bad, not shameful, unsustainable. It required more than you had to give. It demanded a performance you couldn't maintain forever. And when the performance finally broke down, when your system finally couldn't keep up the pace, the darkness filled the space that the performance used to occupy. This isn't blame. You didn't cause this through some moral failing, but the conditions of your life contributed to the collapse. And healing requires looking at those conditions with honesty and without judgment. Because going back to the same conditions will produce the same result. Message 4. You need things you're not getting, connection. Real connection, not the performance kind, rest. Real rest. Not the guilty kind where you're lying down but thinking about everything you should be doing. Permission to not be okay. Permission to need help. Permission to fall apart without it meaning you're broken. You've been operating in a deficit of the most basic human needs, and the darkness is in part the deficit speaking. The real reason fighting the darkness doesn't work is that you're fighting a signal, not a cause. You're fighting the alarm instead of addressing the fire. You can muffle the alarm, suppress the symptoms, push through the exhaustion, but the fire keeps burning because nobody's looking at it. The messages inside the darkness are the map to the fire, and the shift, the real shift, isn't from dark to light. It's from fighting to listening, from resistance to presence, From how do I make this stop? To what is this trying to tell me? That shift is what we're building now. Chapter 4: The Shift, From Fighting to Being With. Everything you've been taught about dealing with darkness has been about action. Do something, try something, fix something, fight harder, think differently, change your routine, take a supplement, get up earlier, exercise more. Every piece of advice you've ever received has been a verb, an action item, something to do. And you've done them. You've done all of them: the gratitude list, the morning walk, the therapy appointment, the meditation app, the vitamins, the journaling. Some of them helped a little. Most of them felt like one more task on a list that was already crushing you. And the fact that they didn't work the way they were supposed to made you feel worse. Like you were failing at recovery. Like even getting better was something you weren't good enough at. Here's the shift. Stop doing, start being with. This is crucial. The shift isn't from darkness to light. It's not a rescue mission. It's a change in relationship. Right now, your relationship with the darkness is adversarial. It's the enemy. You're at war with how you feel. You spend energy every day trying to not feel what you feel, resisting, suppressing, overriding, masking. And that war is draining you faster than the darkness itself. The shift is from war to coexistence, from resistance to allowing, from "I need this to stop" to "I'm here. This is here. I can be with this." Let me explain what being with means practically, because it sounds passive and you're probably thinking it sounds like giving up, like surrendering to the darkness, like lying down and letting it win. It's not. It's the opposite of giving up. Being with is the most active, most courageous thing you can do. It requires more strength than fighting because fighting is reactive. Fighting is adrenaline. Fighting is familiar. Being with requires a kind of stillness that your entire system has been avoiding, because stillness means feeling what you've been running from. It means stopping the performance, stopping the pretending, stopping the forced positivity that exhausts you more than the darkness itself, and sitting honestly with what's actually happening inside you. It means when the heaviness comes in the morning, instead of immediately trying to override it with action or shame or a to-do list or a motivational quote, you acknowledge it. I feel heavy today. That's what's here. Not I shouldn't feel heavy. Not what's wrong with me. Not I need to fix this immediately. Just this is what's here right now. A statement of fact. A recognition of reality, not a judgment of it. This isn't resignation. This isn't giving in. This is presence. And presence does something that fighting never could. It tells your nervous system that you're safe. When you fight the darkness, when you resist and suppress, your nervous system reads that as threat. Something dangerous is happening and you're fighting it, so it stays activated. It stays in stress mode. It keeps pumping cortisol. It keeps the fight or flight engine running. The exhaustion continues because your system never gets the signal that it's safe to stand down. Most people miss this about what happens when you stop fighting. Your nervous system begins to regulate. When you acknowledge what you feel without trying to change it, your brain receives a safety signal. Not everything is fine. That would be dishonest, but I can be here with this. I'm not in danger from this feeling. That signal, that tiny permission, begins to shift your nervous system from dorsal vagal shutdown toward ventral vagal engagement. The transition isn't instant. It's gradual. But it's real, And it starts with the simple act of being with instead of fighting against. Let me give you the practical framework. It has 3 parts. Part 1, permission pauses. 3 times a day, stop whatever you're doing and check in with yourself. Don't try to feel better, just ask, what's here right now? And whatever the answer is, heaviness, numbness, sadness, anger, nothing, whatever it is, let it be there. Say to yourself, this is allowed, not this is good, not I'm grateful for this lesson. Just this is allowed. You are allowed to feel exactly what you feel. No one gets to tell you that your current emotional state is wrong. It's information. It's your system communicating. And communication only works if the recipient is willing to listen without judgment. Part 2, emotional discharge. This is about letting the stored feelings finally move. Everything you've been carrying, every feeling you suppressed to keep functioning, every grief you postponed, every anger you swallowed. It's all still in your body, stored as tension, as weight, as the heaviness that defines your days. Discharge is the process of letting it out. Crying is discharge, not the polite kind. The messy, ugly, can't stop once it starts kind. So is screaming into a pillow. So is shaking. Your body knows how to discharge stress. Animals do. It instinctively. A gazelle that escapes a lion shakes violently for several minutes afterward, discharging the stress hormones from its system. Then it walks away and goes back to grazing. Humans don't do this. We suppress the discharge because it looks undignified. We hold it together, and the stored energy stays trapped in our nervous system, becoming the chronic tension and heaviness we carry. So is writing without editing, without planning, without structure. Just putting words on a page and letting whatever comes out come out. So is sitting in silence and letting whatever needs to surface, surface, without managing it. Without controlling how the feeling expresses itself, without making it look acceptable or appropriate or contained. The key is no management. You've been managing your feelings for years, possibly decades. That's exactly why they're stuck. The discharge happens when you stop managing and start allowing. This might look messy. It might feel scary. You might cry for what feels like no reason or for a reason you thought you'd resolved years ago. You might feel rage at something you thought you'd forgiven. You might tremble or feel waves of sensation moving through your body. Let it come, all of it. Every feeling that moves through you is one less feeling stored in your body as weight. Every tear is a gram of the heaviness leaving. You don't need to understand it. You just need to let it move. Part 3, honest expression. This is the hardest because it involves other people. It means telling one trusted person the truth, not the performed truth, not I've been struggling a bit, the actual truth. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. I'm exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. I've been pretending, and I can't pretend anymore. This act of honest expression does 2 things. It breaks the isolation that the darkness feeds on, and it releases the enormous energy drain of the performance. When even one person knows the truth, the burden of hiding decreases. The energy that was going toward maintaining the facade becomes available for healing. Here's what actually happens over time when you practice being with instead of fighting against. The darkness doesn't vanish. I want to be honest about that, but it changes. It becomes less total, less suffocating. It goes from being the entire sky to being a weather pattern that moves, some days darker, some days lighter, patches of something that aren't darkness. Not happiness yet, but not nothing. Maybe a moment where you notice the sunlight, a moment where food tastes like something, a moment where you laugh before you remember you're not supposed to be laughing. Those moments are the first signs of thaw. They don't come from fighting. They come from the nervous system beginning to regulate, from the stored emotions beginning to move, from the performance beginning to drop, from your system finally getting the message that it's allowed to start healing. The real reason being with works where fighting doesn't is that healing requires safety, and fighting creates threat. You cannot heal in a state of war with yourself. Your body will not repair while it's under attack, even if the attack is your own resistance to what you feel. Being with is the ceasefire that allows the repair to begin. But being with is the starting point, not the ending point. At some point, the darkness begins to shift, and when it does, you need to know how to move forward without pretending it was never there. That's the final chapter. Chapter 5. Moving forward without leaving yourself behind. There will come a day, maybe not soon, maybe not in a straight line, but there will come a day when the darkness isn't the first thing you feel in the morning, when the heaviness lifts enough that you can breathe without effort, when you notice something beautiful and your first response is to feel it, not to wonder why you can't. That day is coming, not because you fought hard enough, because you finally stopped fighting and let the healing happen. But here's what nobody tells you about coming out of the darkness. The world will expect you to be the person you were before, and you won't be. You can't be. The person who went into the darkness and the person who comes out are not the same person. And trying to be who you were before is just another performance, another gap between who you are and who people expect you to be, another source of the exhaustion that put you here in the first place. Moving forward means moving forward as who you are now, not who you were now. And who you are now is someone who has been through something that changed you. That's not damage. That's depth. This is crucial. The first principle of sustainable recovery is honoring your pace, not the pace the world wants from you, not the pace your boss needs, not the pace your family expects, your pace. If you can do 60% of what you used to do and that's what your system can handle right now, then 60% is 100% of your current capacity. And operating at full current capacity is not failure. It's health. It's the responsible, sustainable, honest way to rebuild. Pushing to 100% of your old capacity when your system can only handle 60 is how you end up back in the darkness. The relapse isn't caused by not trying hard enough. It's caused by trying to be the old you instead of being the current you. The second principle is boundaries as medicine, not boundaries as a self-care buzzword you see on Instagram. Boundaries as literal medicine for a depleted system, as critical to your recovery as any prescription. Every obligation you carry that doesn't serve your healing is a drain on resources that should be going to recovery. Every yes that should have been no is a withdrawal from an account that's been in overdraft for months or years. Every social event you attend out of obligation instead of desire costs energy your healing needs. Every favor you do because you feel guilty, saying no steals resources from the repair happening inside you. You don't have the luxury of unlimited capacity right now. You might have had it once, or thought you did. You don't have it now. And pretending you do is one of the fastest roads back into the darkness. So capacity must be protected, fiercely, unapologetically, not with passive hints that people might pick up on, with clear, direct, honest statements of what you can and cannot do right now. The things that drain you need to be reduced or eliminated. The things that nourish you need to be prioritized and protected, not because you're selfish, not because you don't care about other people, because you're recovering, and recovery has non-negotiable requirements. A person healing from surgery doesn't apologize for not running a marathon. Don't apologize for not performing at full capacity when your system is in recovery. Most people miss this about what nourishment looks like during recovery. It doesn't look like the self-care the internet sells you. It's not bubble baths and face masks and treat yourself. Those are pleasant. They're not nourishing. Real nourishment during recovery looks like being honest when someone asks how you are. It looks like going to bed when you're tired instead of pushing through. It looks like canceling plans without guilt when your body says no. It looks like spending time with the one person who doesn't require you to perform. It looks like crying when you need to instead of waiting until you're alone. It looks like silence that isn't empty but intentional. It looks like doing less and being more. And it looks boring and unremarkable from the outside, which is exactly how you know it's real. The third principle is integrating the darkness, not erasing it. The darkness you've experienced is now part of your story, not a chapter you skip, not a gap in your timeline, a chapter that gave you something, not through suffering worship, not through the toxic positivity of everything happens for a reason, through the honest recognition that you now understand things about yourself, about life, about resilience, about what matters, that you couldn't have learned any other way. You know what it feels like to lose yourself, so you'll protect yourself differently now. You know what it feels like to be exhausted beyond what rest can fix, so you'll set limits differently now. You know what the performance costs, so you'll be more honest now. These aren't silver linings. They're hard W on knowledge, and they deserve a place in who you become next. Here's what actually happens when you move forward as your current self instead of performing your former self. You build a life that actually fits you, not the life that looked good but was slowly killing you. A life with space in it, space for bad days, space for rest, space for the feelings that need to move through you, space for honesty, space for the slow, imperfect, non-linear process of becoming someone who has been through the darkness and carries that experience with wisdom instead of shame. The fourth principle is allowing help. Not just professional help, though that matters enormously, and if you haven't sought it, this is a gentle, honest push to do so. Therapy, medication if appropriate, these are not admissions of failure. They are tools of recovery. But beyond professional help, allowing help also means letting the people who love you actually see you, not the performance. You, letting them sit with you in the dark without trying to fix it. Letting them bring you food and not apologizing. Letting them hold the silence. Letting them say, I don't know what to do, but I'm here, and accepting that as enough. Because it is enough. Presence is enough. You've been starving for presence while drowning in advice. Let people just be with you, the way this audiobook has been with you for the last hour. The fifth principle is the slowest and most important, rebuilding trust with yourself. The darkness shattered your self-trust in ways you might not have fully recognized. You lost confidence in your own resilience. You used to believe you could handle anything. Now you're not sure you can handle Tuesday. You lost confidence in your own judgment. Decisions that used to feel automatic now feel paralyzing. You lost confidence in your ability to handle what life throws at you, in your future, in the possibility that things can get better. You started believing that the darkness defined you, that it would always be this way, that you were fundamentally, irreparably broken at the core. You're not broken, you were overwhelmed. There's a massive difference between those two things. Broken means the system is damaged beyond repair. Overwhelmed means the system received more input than it could process. One is permanent, the other is temporary. What you experienced was temporary, even though it doesn't feel temporary, even though it feels like it's been forever. Even though you can't see the end from where you're standing, it is temporary. Systems recover when the load is reduced and the conditions for healing are met. And rebuilding trust with yourself happens the same way rebuilding trust with anyone happens, slowly, through small, consistent acts of reliability, through keeping small promises to yourself and actually following through. Not big, transformative, life-changing goals, small things, almost embarrassingly small things. I will go outside for 5 minutes today, and then doing it. I will eat one real meal today, and then doing it. I will tell one person the truth about how I actually am, and then doing it. I will go to bed when my body says it's tired instead of pushing through, and then doing it. Each kept promise is a brick in the bridge between who you are now and who you're becoming. And the bridge doesn't need to be finished to be useful. Even one brick is one more than you had yesterday. The real reason you can move forward is not that the darkness is over. It's that you've changed your relationship with it. You're no longer at war. You're no longer performing wellness. You're no longer fighting to be who you were. You're allowing yourself to be who you are. And who you are is someone who has earned every single quiet morning that's coming. Someone who knows the weight and chose to set it down instead of carrying it forever. Someone who sat in the dark and instead of screaming for the light, learned to see what the dark was showing. You're still here, after everything. You're still here. That's not survival. That's strength you don't have a name for yet. Let me tell you something about what just happened. You sat here for an hour, in the dark, without anyone telling you to cheer up, without anyone handing you a solution, without anyone asking you to perform being okay, without anyone rushing you toward the light, and you're still here, still breathing, still listening, still open enough to let words reach you even when everything feels heavy and the idea of hope feels like too much to carry. Do you know how much strength that takes? You probably don't. Because you've spent so long calling yourself weak that you've forgotten what you're actually doing every single day just by continuing to exist. You're surviving a system-wide collapse of your neurochemistry, your nervous system, your emotional reserves, and your sense of meaning, simultaneously, while going to work, while showing up for people who depend on you, while pretending to be fine so convincingly that nobody thinks to ask if you're not. That's not weakness. That is an extraordinary, quiet, invisible act of endurance that nobody around you fully comprehends. And you've been doing it without acknowledgement, without adequate support, and without anyone giving you permission to stop performing and start healing. This is me giving you permission, right now, not conditionally, not with a timeline attached, not with expectations about how fast you should recover or what recovery should look like. Unconditionally. You are allowed to not be okay. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to stop fighting and start healing. You are allowed to let the darkness be here without treating it as your enemy. You are allowed to need help and to ask for it. You are allowed to move at whatever pace your body and mind and heart can actually sustain. You are allowed to build a new life that has room in it for everything you've been through. You're telling yourself you should be further along by now, that other people handle this better, that something is fundamentally wrong with you that other people don't have. None of that is true. You are a human being whose systems were overwhelmed. That's all. And systems can be restored, not by force, by care. I'm not going to end this with a demand. I'm not going to tell you to go do something right now. You've had enough demands. Instead, I'm going to ask you one question, and you don't have to answer it today. You can sit with it as long as you need to. What would change if you stopped punishing yourself for being in pain and started treating yourself the way you'd treat someone you love who was hurting this much? Just sit with that. There's no rush. The dark is still here, but so are you, and you are not as small as the darkness makes you feel. You are the entire person who carried it, and that person deserves what comes next. Whatever comes next, whenever it comes, at whatever pace it comes. You're enough even here, even now, even in this. Especially in this.